Okay, so there's already a lot of different opinions, message boards, videos, especially on YouTube, out there regarding the new edition, fifth edition of Dungeons and Dragons coming out here pretty soon. And I've watched a lot of these videos and read a lot of stuff already. So I certainly hope that I'm not repeating anything anybody has said already, because I can't get around to read all of them. Unfortunately, there's so much on the internet right now, just flying back and forth. So I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about the advent of 5th edition, the rise of this new version of Dungeons and Dragons. And I would have to say, for the most part, I myself, as a gamer, I'm excited. Mostly because I've played all previous versions of Dungeons and Dragons, including the precursor to Dungeons and Dragons, Chainmail, which some of you may have heard me talk about in some of my previous videos and whatnot. And when I was 8 years old, I cut my teeth on Dungeons and Dragons itself. I started Dungeons and Dragons is what I started playing when I first got into role playing. And yes, like I said, I was only 8 years old. But now I'm in my so I've been gaming for over 20 years altogether. And in a lot of ways, I'm actually really, really looking forward to what they come up with next. Now, I do know that there are a few people out there, and as well as the game designers themselves, have said that they want to bring everybody back together. Mostly because, different versions of D&D and whatnot, there are different versions, obviously, that everybody enjoy. The way that we now have different factions of people who get together for different versions of the game and whatnot. And one thing I would have to say is that each version of the game had its merits, but a lot of times it seems like we only really begin to understand the merits of a particular game, or how maybe it's superior or inferior to other versions of the same game, or maybe even different games, when we have something to compare it to. So. And I've heard a lot of it over the years. A lot of people say that. A lot of people have said or tried to tell me that third edition was better than second edition. 3.5 was better than third edition. Fourth edition was better than 3.5, and now back to third edition. Pathfinder is better than fourth edition, and so. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to consider. It's a lot to try to keep track of. So I guess for the most part, what I would like to talk about is what I think the designers of the new 5th edition can do in order to make the game better. And maybe do something to bring the different factions, the splinters of D&D fans back together under a single edition, as well as what I think has worked in the past and what they maybe want to consider keeping. First, I'm going to go ahead and talk about game mechanics. Now, in a lot of ways, when you consider the way things ran, the way things worked in first and second edition, for the most part, the game. I never thought of the game as particularly rules heavy, although it may have been kind of, and maybe not even so much math heavy, but at the same time math intensive, if that makes sense. Because when you're trying to calculate THAC0, to hit armor class 0, as it were, you want to roll high in order to hit lower numbers. So that tended to be a little confusing at times. And I know plenty of people, and when I was younger, I myself had to do this. I know plenty of people who can't calculate THAC0, or who had trouble calculating THAC0 and needed like a chart on the character sheet in order to help them work it out. Me personally, actually, I should admit that in some ways I still do it. Like whenever we play second edition with some of my people, some of my groups that I'm with, what I have to do is I add up all of my bonuses to hit and everything for a particular attack by weapon. Of course, for those of you who remember what the second edition and first edition character sheets look like, you know what I'm talking about. And in the THAC0 column, I have to write out the number. I have to actually write out the number that I need to roll on the dice in order to hit AC 0, and then count up or down, from there, and everything. And of course, just me having to explain it, that should give you an idea of just how crazy it was at times. Because I know there are a lot of people out there who maybe some of the younger gamers who have never played, never even looked at a second edition or first edition book, or perhaps don't even remember when the game was called. When the game was just called Dungeons and Dragons, because there was original first edition Dungeons and Dragons, and then advanced D&D, and then finally second edition advanced D&D. But I digress. My point is that the way in which third edition actually did improve upon things from second edition was and previous incarnations. The way that third edition and then thusly, of course, 3.5 improved on that is that everything had to be counted up. Like your armor class started at 10, actually like it did before, but then instead of armor and shields and whatnot that you had subtracting from 10, so that eventually you have an armor class into the negatives. The armor class started counting up. Like you get 1 point for having a shield, depending on the type of shield it is, and then you have additional armor rating. And then you have a higher armor class based on the type of armor that you're wearing. If it's light armor, then you also get to add your dex bonus, stuff like that. So that was good. Then also in the changeover from second to third, and actually in this case what I'm going to talk about in fourth edition, were the way they had skills. Whereas previously you had proficiencies. The way proficiencies worked, of course, each proficiency was based on one of your attributes, ability scores, much like the skills are now in third and fourth edition. And you had to make a roll. You had to make a roll in order to succeed at using a particular proficiency. But the thing is that each proficiency in second edition, you came with a particular value. Like in order to successfully, let's say, off the top of my head, I want to say fire building. Which is an odd kind of proficiency to have in and of itself. Fire building was based off of wisdom, and actually the score for it, the trait assigned to it was wisdom -1, which means that what you would have to do is roll a d. In order to use your fire building proficiency, you'd have to roll a d20, and then what you want to do is you want to roll under your wisdom -1. Again, with third and fourth edition, the way they did this with the skills and everything, again, it was a situation much like armor class, like I was just talking about, where there you have a set difficulty instead, and you want to hit that number or higher. So again, being able to roll higher, going up the scale and everything was preferred. So in those two respects, I do think. And the same was pretty much true with saving throws, as well. In those two respects, third and fourth edition actually made a good improvement over the original rules. Another thing that I would think that the game designers should also consider when it comes to making improvements over the game system and whatnot is actually the cost of the game and the cost of a book. I haven't heard anybody mention anything about the cost just yet, at least of the books that are now available. And but one thing that I do remember as a gamer, as a much younger gamer, going into a bookstore, gaming store, whatever, hobby shop, because there weren't too many back in the day. There weren't too many stores, especially stores that were specifically catered to gamers. Not like there are now, anyway. But not a lot anyway. Is my point. Is the cost of the game and the materials One thing that a lot of Wizards of the Coast detractors are always saying is that one of the problems with the way that they do business is that they put out all kinds of materials and whatnot, and a lot of us may have seen this during the early days, and then of course the meteoric rise of Magic the Gathering. What they'll do is they put out a lot of stuff, and it always seems like the stuff that they put out seems to get better and better, but at the same time, you essentially wind up having to spend more money in order to obtain it. Say like when some of the first Magic cards, when some of the first sets of Magic came out, and there were some pretty nifty cards in there, and then newer sets came out, and some of the newer sets had basic cards that were much more powerful and much more effective than the stuff you bought previously. So with Magic the Gathering, the idea kind of what it all boiled down to was spend more money, get a better deck, and which always seemed kind of strange to me, seeing as how all the advertisements for Magic the Gathering and whatnot, other products put out by Wizards of the Coast, it was all about the game, it was all about having fun. Now, I do understand. Don't get me wrong. I do understand that Wizards of the Coast is a company. They are a business, and they're out to make money. But it seems like they might be able to do for as long as they've been in business now, and if they really want to. If they really want to reach out to their audience and figure out one of the ways that they can make the game better, I think it would probably be one of the best things that they could do would actually be to try to find a way to probably get the materials out to their audience, to their customers, cheaper, if at all possible. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here.